Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Season 1, Episode 7 of Invasion. So, I think the main, just real easy reason why I'm going into just one episode is just because, the last time I covered this, I covered 2 episodes because they were easy to do. And plus, also, given how the views tend to slowly but surely trickle in on the series, and plus also I just have a number of other things to do. I'm gonna kind of toss this in with my other stuff of today to just kind of keep this alive and keep this going. So because I'm just being honest. This is just gonna be another thing that I do today. So with that said, let's go into episode 7. So I would say that episode 7 is a fairly there's stuff about it that it is kind of a thumbs up kind of episode. We have some possible productive things going on in Mitsuki's story. Really just still enjoying the Anisha family story and Ahmed family story, just kind of going and kind of seeing where that continues to go on, because if that doesn't seem to be the let's see what happened to the family going from last episode to now this one, to see if Ahmed is going to die or what is going to happen through all of this. So Travante, it seems that he is to connect with some guy who's to possibly maybe be his guide of sorts, or possibly to be a guy who can translate for him of sorts. And so he meets up with this guy and his family that are probably oblivious to what is even going on. And so now Travante is to have to deal with that. We have the UK kids. They're going off and just going back home, supposedly. I'm I would honestly be really terrified, thinking you've been away for a number of days. Are you going to go back home, and is your family even alive? Is your family even home? Which makes that even worse, where it's just how can you reconnect to a family where you don't even know where they are? And so you're just going to go on home and hope for the best. Yeah. I don't know how that's really going to work. I'm kind of curious if these kids are going to have to go and all rejoin back together, because they there was no one home, is my biggest worry. So yeah, with that said, that's a bulk of the episode right there, is to really just be within that story. So pretty easy to just digest. So let's just go right into spoilers about this one, because I don't have much to say. It's a good episode. I like it. I enjoy it. It feels like a very productive episode. I just don't have much to say about the show. I just don't have anything creative or whatever about it. There are episodes where you're kind of very concerned about all of the characters, but then there's certain episodes where it's just kind of okay, we just needed something to do in this episode. And it kind of feels like certain characters are just man, this person's story is just not as interesting as I would like it to be, and there's always going to be that kind of character. If it wasn't Mitsuki before, now I honestly think that Travante probably has the least interesting story out of here. The UK kids, there is this kind of back and forth about that. like, because they are like we can almost say that probably the UK kids and Travante are kind of fighting for real estate in this episode, or really just in starting to become this series where like which one is the least interesting story. So let me know in the comments below if you've consistently watched throughout all these episodes. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about this story so far, because this is a seventh installment. So let's go into that double five. Let's just go otherwise into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we just spoil this episode. So we're starting to see the monsterish thing from the last episode carry on into this episode, and meaning that like we get to see another one of these aliens just going by and trying to get into some kind of something, and then it goes and takes off. It seems that like I'm just waiting for there to be some huge massive war attack like thing, like, but I'm not really getting that. Like I'm just waiting for like what was that one episode before with the whole spaceship and the firing the bullets and all that jazz. Like I want there to be like something with that. Like really the last episode kind of helped with there being like this kind of home invasion kind of thing where we had this alien going into this house and trying to basically find somebody to kill. So let's go on to it. Let's go into the Travante story. I think that's probably the easiest thing to go into. So Travante, what is happening with him? So Travante is to go on and consistently just drive to any location because he's supposedly trying to figure out a way to head home. He is trying to go to some airport or some air base or something to try to make it out of here. And so he is to go on to find this one like place that is to have seemingly all of these people who had, I guess, either exploded or been in a fire, been in an attack, been in some war or something. And so Travante is to go on and have this kind of bandana over his head, and he has his gun kind of like, I don't know what he's to expect here. And so we have Travante finding this family. And so Travante is to, of course, like ask them, hey, do you guys speak English? And luckily the father does. It's like, oh, okay, great. Because otherwise, like we're not going to have such a good time. So understanding one another. Because we had Travante, who had the one guy before, where neither one of them could understand one another, and he brought him to a goat, and he's like, no, that's not what I want. I wasted so much time looking for a freaking goat. So we have this family, and they're saying like, well, yeah, like they're like planes fell, like war had broke out, and so on and so forth. And so this guy is giving Travante food, and so he eats it because he probably hasn't eaten in a number of days. Like, this guy, I'm just worried that he's going to, like, drop dead of either dehydration or something. So this family is to plan on heading to a place called Cabal, and Travante's like, well, that's like 200 miles. How do you expect to walk 200 miles? And they're like, hey man, like we're just gonna huff it. We don't care. Like we're just gonna try and get to this one place because we have nowhere else to go. So excuse me. So Travante gets this family, and I'm gonna go and focus on like one character and do what I always do, just kind of play out their whole story in one episode, one fell swoop of the thing, and then switch to the next people as I always do. Is this is the seventh installment of this, so if you still don't know the order of which that I do things, then check out pilot to now of the show. So Travante is to take this family off to this airport, and so it seems like there are some other people making their way there. So when they make it to this airport, and Travante is to think that no one is actually here, they go further on into the airport to find out there's this massive plane trying to pick up random people, and so Travante is to say, "Hey, I'm a U.S. Navy SEAL. You're gonna have me go onto this plane because I have technically a gun on me." So they go on, and they have Travante go into this this plane, but now we have it where Travante is forced to trade his gun, so that way him and this family can go onto this plane. And also when they were making this drive here, we had the one kid who was saying that he was thirsty and wanted water, and so the father just gives the kid water, and the kid is drinking the whole thing up. And Travante's like, seriously? Like, you know we have to ration this water, right? Like, this kid can't just drink this water whenever he wants to. Like, it's like, we're all going to die if he does that. And so Travante is to ask this guy, it's like, well, what if, like, he's going to be thirsty again in another hour or so, and we don't have any water? And so the guy is like, well, hope maybe is as good as water, and so we're going to tell him if he's thirsty that we're going to be there soon. So we're going to get water there, supposedly. So yeah, so when they go on and make it to this plane, this father is to mention to Travante, it's like, God is watching over you. And Travante is like, no, man, like, God isn't watching over me. And he's like, yeah, he is. Like, God's watching over you. And we also had, like, the guy in the car asking Travante if he has any kids, because he can kind of tell a father's eyes, because of course he is one. And so Travante doesn't say anything or doesn't mention anything, but so we might have to assume that Travante may have some kids when he finally figures out how to make his way back home, if that is even a possibility for him to even do that, because we don't even know at this point. Like, we don't even know if Travante can go and figure out or find out where the heck that he is to actually go on and be and whatever at this point. So, or where he's heading to next, or if he's probably going to be killed at some point going somewhere. So, that concludes that character. So, let's move on to Anisha and her family, because that seems like a simple enough story. So, from the beginning of the last episode, Ahmed, of course, was to get hurt by that alien, and so we need to figure out how badly these injuries are. So Anisha goes off and is to take Ahmed into this forest and is to check his condition, because Ahmed just kind of passes out. So Anisha goes on to check Ahmed's body, and she realizes that he needs to get a part of his body drained of fluids, because I think maybe like it's not a collapsed lung, but it's like somewhere like further down. So it'd probably have to be that maybe there's a part of his ribs that it's broken, something or other. There's some kind of injury that causes Anisha to tend to him and jab this like needle nose pliers into his chest to relieve the pressure of this bleeding, and that's all I'll say. Because I'm not a doctor, what do I know? So maybe his liver is, I don't know, whichever. Anyways, so Ahmed, of course, is to be like, oh my god, you saved my life, thank you, because could have just left him off the side of the road and just, like, because that's basically what Ahmed was almost going to do to his wife and kids at one point, running off to go onto some other neighbor's car and say, just take me, just take me. You, like, she just saved your life. Like, and she didn't have to. She could have just been like, there was so many times where I think Anisha was just like, I'm gonna leave this on the side of the road. I'm gonna murder this man. So this family goes off to eventually find this rando diner that has no one in it. And so they just decide to go and cook their own meal, like put burgers together, put milkshakes together, and all kinds of stuff, just kind of just randomly putting up whatever kind of food. And so Matt is just like, well, so you're a doctor, you're a cook, you're a this, you're a that. It's like, where is this Anisha that I've never seen before? And like, why haven't we ever had uh like this kind of life before where we're just kind of randomly working in some diner somewhere? And Anisha's like, well, like we had, it's just you were never home, you were never here. And so Ahmed's like, well, I'm here now, saying that like, well, I'm going to be your husband now, I guess is the metaphor here that's to be really be said here. So they go off and they have their meal, and then everybody is mentioning like what they're thankful for. And I'm like, that's so weird that I tuned in on this specific episode, because I'm like, this is right around Thanksgiving where you would normally say what you're thankful for. And I tuned in right into this episode where they're kind of mentioning that. And plus, this is like a new show that's coming around this time anyway, so I'm sure they would just have that episode. So they all mention what they're thankful for. I'm not going to rattle off every single thing that they're thankful for, but so like we have them mostly thankful for milkshakes, and so that's usually about it. Like Luke goes off and just rattles off everything that his dad's still alive, his mother saved them, and so on and so forth. Like he's like thanking pretty much everything, that he's still alive and roof over their head and whatever. So Anisha's family is to just start driving around to find that there is some kind of military base like operations that is to, I guess, be at some school of sorts. And so Anisha's family makes their way to this place that they're going to be the most safe. And so she ends up bumping into the doctor that she had gone and tried to save that patient from before. And he's like, "Oh, Dr. Lockhart." And he's like, "Oh, hey, wow, great." And so it seems like they like talk to one another, but it just kind of seems like he's just kind of staring at her weirdly. I don't know why. So we find out, I guess, since technically she's a doctor, they are to go and have her be in this VIP room. And so she has her own little special room. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So really, that's kind of the end of the Anisha family story. So let's go on and let's mention what happens to the UK kids. So, and we'll spend the last bit of this talking about the Mitsuki story, just because like there's a lot of details with that. There's a lot of just them just combing through something. So we'll just figure out how to get to that story, because there's just a lot going on in that, with like a lot of like scientific detailish like things, and I'm just like, ugh, like, all right. Like, if it hopes for us to get some kind of answers with these people, or even if these people end up getting locked away in jail and we have to now tell the jail story of all these characters, which, if the world is technically ending, if they're having an alien invasion, what the is it gonna do for them going in jail somewhere? I'm like, oh no, jail? The world is ending. You're gonna put somebody in jail? Oh, they're so like horrifically concerned about that, I'm sure. So, but let's go into it. So, we have the kids who are going on to make their way home, and they, in their travels, are to go and find a girl who I believe is just being called the Jeep driver in this show. Oh, that sucks. Uh, you would have thought she would have actually had a name. So this woman, they end up finding this woman, and they're asking her about London, and she's like, "I just came from there, and I'm not going back. Like it's very unsafe there, and I came from a town from like a few hundred people, and like there was all this carnage, and she uh was to have blood on her hands that wasn't her own, and all kinds of stuff. Like, this girl has gone through some traumatic events, and so the kids are just like, well, hey, like, we're just gonna go and want to just go home. Like, we don't care about anything else, we just want to go home. So the girl ends up driving them to the closest place of where all of their homes are, because they're kind of technically nearby one another. So we have we have like, there's like 4 or 5 kids that are really just left out of possibly like what should probably be like 30 some odd kids, I'm assuming, in one like normal classroom or class size. But I don't know exactly. You can go onto the bus and count how many kids were in this class. And we had like a handful of kids who all stayed in that like candy truck. So there's about like there's about 5 or 6 kids that are going off to their seemingly nearby homes, coincidentally. So 2 kids go off, and they're like, okay, well, like they basically just tell everybody like, hey, like, hey, it was nice being with you guys, but I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Uh, the one, Monty, is to mention that like he probably doesn't even want to go back to his home, uh, because like what's going on out here is probably not as bad as like him going back to his house, and but he ends up going back to his home anyways. So conveniently, both Jasper and Jamala are to be living nearby this house together. I'm like, oh, come on, are we gonna have like little smooching sesh to really like cement that they're gonna be possibly boyfriend and girlfriend, even though they're fairly young, and like I wouldn't have them like, but like they've been through some stuff together, like, and none of it was all easy. So you would think that they would have just like had like some kind of smooching session before they were heading off into their home, or you would probably have these people like cement that it's like, hey, like if no one's home in your house or no one's home in my house, like we're gonna go and find one another again, and like we're gonna just like wait it out. So like we'll see what happens with these characters because it doesn't show it. So excuse me. So Jasper and Kamal are to head to their place of their house, and so all of a sudden there's to be one alien like kind of hiding out there, and so they're kind of waiting and they're holding hands. I was like, yeah, they're holding hands. I don't know why, but it's like, yeah, let's cement this relationship weirdly. So the alien leaves, and so Jasper and Jamala, I'm gonna ill pronounce that name. I'm sorry, it's bound to happen. So both these characters go off and spot that the alien was like sitting on this thing, and maybe it was draining it from it or something. I don't know exactly what that is because I've never seen it in my life before. But maybe it was draining it of something, or maybe like this thing sitting on there was melting whatever this was. But they were to see where this thing was resting, and it was like, okay, this is like this thing had melted this thing. So, really, both of them are to decide to, I guess, just go home after this. I don't know, it doesn't really show after that moment. So now let's cover the Mitsuki story. Oh, God. There's a reason I saved this for last. Because I didn't want to get to it. Because, good God, it's about them talking about patterns and signals and like all of this garbity goopy stuff that I'm just like, oh my God, like come on with this story. Not only was it hard to follow, but then also with it being in subtitles, it was hard to follow. Like I was just like, man, there's a lot of dialogue going on here. Okay, or okay, I'm gonna try to figure it all out. Cause good grief. So going for the Mitsuki part of this show, we have Mitsuki, who is to of course be with Kato and Ikuro. Ikuro? Am I saying that right? Probably not. Let's go on. So these three characters head on out to this satellite that I guess is going to pick up certain signals. And so they go off to this base and they're lying through their teeth to try to get in there. And then they're lying through their teeth to try to get people to do what they need them to do. And so they go and they find this one signal. And so they're trying to decipher this signal. And they find out that it's some kind of like hive mind like signal where there's nothing like, of course, like there's like basically a bunch of just random signals all coming into like one massive signal of a thing. And so they're now having to cut all through like seemingly like hundreds of thousands seemingly of stuff that is coming through this one signal supposedly. And so they like are cutting through all this stuff to eventually find this one distress signal. And so Mitsuki is like, oh my God, we found it. We found some kind of distress signal. And so they were trying to like load it, and I think they were trying to like record it, or they were trying to like keep it or something. And all of a sudden we end up having these Japanese officials that end up coming in and stopping these people from doing what they're doing and arresting a number of people. And Mitsuki's like, no, by the end of the episode, and she ends up getting caught. and arrested and taken and is gone forever. That's really the end of the actual episode, anyways. And so there's a reason why I wanted to just go and um, and we have the whole time that they're making that way there with Kato is to go and talk to Mitsuki and say like, God, we are so going to jail. Like he is to mention how they had already stolen equipment, that they're going to this one place to fake their way through this place. And he's like, man, we're getting so arrested. And like, Mitsuki, why do you not have a problem with this? Like, why are you just like blatantly just going on and doing all this stuff as if there is no concern? And because really, Mitsuki is to have this mentality of like, hey man, the world is going to freaking end, and you're the only one that doesn't realize that. Because both of the other people in the car are realizing that the world is probably going to end, but the guy from behind them doesn't. It feels like the guy from behind them is just thinking that the world is just going to continue to turn, because it feels like Japan like isn't hugely affected by this invasion. It feels like everywhere else is, but it feels like Japan has not really completely felt this whole like invasion yet, which I think is weird. I'm like, how is it that these people don't know about what's going on everywhere else? Or why is it that they aren't like having this problem like everywhere else is? Like, did they just skip Japan with where the aliens just like, hey man, we're just gonna skip Japan, but we're gonna go and just take out everywhere else? Weirdly, for some goofy reason, I don't know why, that like everywhere else is like defending for their life. Everywhere else is like seeing aliens appear magically deliciously where they are. But Japan, no. They're just like, hey man, we could drive wherever we want. There's not going to be an alien plopping right in front of us, going to kill us. There isn't a spaceship that's going to wipe us out. Excuse me. Excuse. Boo. So yeah. So that is to be it for this review, this episode. So I am going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.